Hey, Steve Gamache here with another Chef Knives to Go quick look product review. What we have this time is the Yusaku Aogami or Blue No. 2 Bunka 180mm knife. So this line of knives has a 3-layer construction. The hard center core cutting steel is Aogami or Blue Paper No. 2 reactive high carbon steel. Heat treats about 62 Rockwell on that core steel. Construction is a soft reactive iron cladding on either side of that harder core steel. And this cladding does have two protective elements. It's got a blacksmith kind of protective scale Kurouchi finish, KU finish. You can see there on the black part of it. And then they've also got a well-executed complete lacquer, food-safe lacquer coating over the entire blade as well, which is actually pretty tough lacquer. I've been using the 210 Guto of this line and a fair amount kind of playing with it. And I have only had like one little area near the edge even give up the lacquer yet, so it's pretty well executed finish. You can choose to leave that on and just let it wear away naturally, or you can strip it off with some acetone if you want and get right to it, but it is an all-reactive blade. FYI. The weight and dimensions on these will vary a little bit from knife to knife, and also depending on what handle's on here. But this particular one is 159 grams, or 5.6 ounces. The edge length is 181 millimeters, or 7.1 inches. Overall length, about 330 millimeters, or 13 inches. And then the thickness, they're a little thicker coming out of the handle. This one measured about 3.2 millimeters above the heel, and then about 2.4 halfway down. And it pretty much keeps that until you hit this turn here on the reverse sword tip, and then it thins out pretty nicely with the grind towards the tip. It actually gets quite thin at the very tip. And then these are ground for a performance, ground and performance orientation, so they're thin at the edge as well. What's cool about them is they're thin at the edge, they're thin at the tip, they perform very well, but they're also kind of pretty stiff and stout, so they've got a nice confident feel on the board. And you also get pretty good food release and food separation because of that kind of shoulder that you get here. You sacrifice a little bit of performance in, harder, dense vegetables and root veggies and that kind of stuff, but it's a good combination overall. And this is based on my use of the 210, but this is a very nicely made knife. It's straight, the grinds look really clean. It's just a well-executed knife blade. The blade height is 46.9 or basically 47 millimeters, and you can see the neck is not that wide, and they've got a little bit of a gap there for your fingers, so you've got lots and lots and lots of clearance on the cutting board with this thing. The handle is just Chef Knives to Go's basic octagonal walnut handle with the maple ferrule. Nothing fancy, but very serviceable. Definitely can, you could put a lacquer coating on it, you could sand it down a little if you wanted to. It's got some versatility to it. They do a nice job sealing it up and a really nice glue job on the tang and where it goes into the handle tang slot, so it's very well sealed up. It's a light handle, so that's good on this knife. It brings the balance point back to a reasonable spot from a pinch point of view. So there's the balance point of the blade. My pinch grip is pretty close to that, maybe slightly in front of that, but it's kind of a nice neutral feel to it. Got a little bit of weight to it. The thickness of the blade kind of brings that into play. I guess we're not ready for that yet. Jumping the gun here. So here's our beauty shot of the blade. Again, it's a well-executed, well-crafted knife. The right side of the blade, as you'd be holding it, has hand-chiseled kanji on it. So it's got hand-engraved kanji. And there is a pretty kind of smooth Kurouchi finish on this. Each knife, I've got 3 of these in this group. Each one has a little different texture to it. Some of them have a little bit more of a kind of a mottled finish to them, like a nishiji almost a little bit. Some of them are a little smoother. The lacquer kind of makes it a little smoother than it might be without that, but hard to tell without the lacquer, or, with the lacquer on there. On the left side of the blade, you've got an embossed kanji on there, but just a well executed. It's got enough of kind of a handmade feel to it, but it's very refined at the same time. But definitely a handcrafted knife, but yet not, not super rustic. So really nice combination there. They've relieved a little bit of the corners of the spine. They've done some file work here on the edges of the choil into the neck, that round curve there. So it's very comfortable. The out-of-the-box edge, I'll give it a 5 out of 10. It's actually crafted pretty nicely, but I think it's got some lacquer over it, because lacquer really does cover the whole blade. So I touched this thing up right out of the box. It'll get really sharp. I did sharpen up the 210, gave it a couple stone progression, and it felt fairly hard, but it sharpened up really nicely, and it'll take a nice edge. So, you know, cursory impression is the steel sharpens up nicely. Can't tell you about edge retention, but it seemed like I said it was fairly hard steel. I'm not an expert sharpener by any means, but so here's our edge profile. It's kind of a typical Bunka edge profile, nothing too crazy. It's got a kind of a moderate amount of belly throughout. Not a huge flat spot anywhere, but a lot of Bunka knives are like this. And you can see the tip is low, typical Bunka style, which means I don't get real high on a rock, so you're not really going to rock with this thing a lot. You can do low stuff, scallions, and things like that. But it should be a pretty good all-around profile. It's not a pure chopper, but a lot of Bunkas are not. But just a well-executed blade. The price point's really good. The craftsmanship is very, very good. And I'm really digging the 210, so I can highly recommend this one as well. So this is the Yusaku Aogami or Blue No. 2 Bunka 180mm knife.